family. Welcome back to No Party with B and J. And today we're asking a question the big outlets won't touch. How do we get from fighting drugs to basically standing on the edge of war with Venezuela?
And why is Venezuela on TV talking not just about drug boats, but about a cover up of the Epstein files and the United States protecting Donald Trump?
Ooh, they said we're protecting a pedophile.
Woo.
And he's over there bombing stuff. Tonight, we're breaking it down, the strikes on those boats, the legal mess, the war buildup, and why Venezuela is saying y'all started something and now we're getting ready.
Let's start with what actually happened. Since September 1st of this year, the United States military has been carrying out airstrikes on small boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The White House says these are drug traffickers, with at least 76 people dead from about 19 airstrikes.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
Trump went on bragging about blowing up a boat from Venezuela. Said it was loaded with drugs and full of narco terrorists. No trial, no court, just a drone, a missile, and 11 people gone just.
And after that first strike, they just kept going. More boats, more deaths, with no real transparency.
Here's where the story starts to crack. That first boat, Venezuelan media say it was about 12 meters long, leaving a tiny fishing village, and was likely headed to Trinidad and Tobago, not the U.S.
Experts are looking at these little boats like, how is this some major invasion threat to the United States? And if it's headed between two Caribbean islands, why is the U.S. dropping bombs on it in international waters?
Families of the dead say many of them were fishermen, not cartel soldiers. Some governments in the region have quietly said the same thing, that the people killed look more like poor coastal workers than narco terrorists.
And here's the key detail. The U.S. has not publicly shown evidence that most of these specific boats were carrying any drugs. They just labeled them as drug boats. That's it.
International law experts have been lining up to say, hold up. You can't just bomb boats in international waters because you suspect that they are smuggling.
UN human rights experts, Amnesty International, and legal scholars are calling these strikes extrajudicial killings, basically saying this looks like murder under international law, not a legal act of war.
Because let's think about it. These boats, they weren't attacking in the U.S. They weren't firing on U.S. ships. Many were tiny, low-capacity vessels that would have had to stop and refuel so many times just to reach anywhere near the U.S. shores.
So when the U.S. blows them up, kills everybody on board, and never proves anything, yeah, people around the world are going to say, that's not law enforcement, that's murder.
Now put yourself in Venezuela's shoes. You're watching U.S. warships and jets stack up in the Caribbean. You see your people killed on boats. You hear Trump and his team basically threatening more strikes and even ground operations.
So what does Venezuela do? They start mobilizing tens of thousands of troops to coastal regions, extra forces in border states, air defense units on alert, a massive deployment if the U.S. attacks.
That's what we mean when we say war mode. They're not just talking, they're moving soldiers, planes, and ships because they believe the U.S. has already started something.
And here's where it ties back to what we covered on the Jeffrey Epstein files. While all this is happening in the Caribbean, Democrats in Congress are dropping the Epstein emails and files that look really bad for Trump, showing just how close he might have been to a convicted child predator.
Venezuela is a dumb. They're watching the U.S. too. Maduro and his people have said out loud the U.S. attacks and threats are part of a political show that Washington is protecting Trump, and that while they excuse Venezuela's of drugs, accuse them of drugs, they're hiding their own scandals, including the Epstein files.
It doesn't look good. Even here in the U.S., people like Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker are warning, with all this Epstein information coming out, Trump might take us to war with Venezuela just to change the headlines.
So Venezuela is basically saying to the world, they're killing our people at sea, calling it a drug war, while they hide the truth about the Epstein and Trump. Why should we sit and do nothing?
We've got to go back to those boats for a second because this matters. Some of these vessels were just small fishing style boats, and they're operating between Caribbean islands. They would have had to refuel multiple times to even get close to the U.S. So it didn't look like they were carrying drugs. It looks like it could have been local fishermen.
Well,
who
they're
could have been
small.
murdered.
That's a whole lot, you know. And then, like I said, their families are saying, you know, that they didn't do that. If your story is we're stopping drugs from killing Americans, but the boats you're blowing up might just be making short runs between neighboring countries, that doesn't look like defending the U.S. That looks like flexing power and sending a message.
And when no drugs are shown, no names are released, and no evidence is shared, people are going to believe the families, the fishermen, and the regional governments over the press conference.
Wow. International law says you just don't blow up boats in international waters unless you're in an actual war or you're just acting in self-defense.
UN experts are saying there's no declared war, no clear self-defense, and no legal basis. That makes these strikes potentially illegal, and in their words, extrajudicial executions.
Venezuela calls it murder. And you know what? Looking at the facts, a lot of people in the world agree.
And if this continues to escalate, carrier groups, strikes, threats of ground operations, we're looking at a possible war in Latin America. Thousands of deaths, a refugee crisis, and an empowerment of cartels who thrive in chaos.
And all of this for what? To blow up questionable drug boats and protect a political narrative back home?
And potentially distract from Epstein files and other scandals that could damage Trump domestically.
This is why no party with B&J exists. Because while they distract you with slogans, we're connecting the dots. Drug war claims, civilian deaths at sea, UN calling it murder, Venezuela going into war mode, Epstein files dropping at the same time, and a president who might use war as a distraction.
It's a disgrace to put people's lives at stake to distract from something that you've done. This is far bigger than the left versus the right. This is about truth versus spin and lives versus headlines.
You deserve to know how we got here, what they're doing in our name, and what it could cost.
This is no party with B&J. We're not here to comfort the powerful. We're here to wake up the people.